Hey everyone, welcome to Metal Connect. This is where you get to meet the incredible people that share time with us every single Saturday. You're of course going to have an opportunity to ask them questions. Today's featured speaker blows my mind because him and I have more in common than I ever thought. I actually was looking at a studio that he eventually bought, which was an old component of Industrial Lights and Magic, the old ILM, Kerner Studios based in Marin County. He is a hardcore entrepreneur, but he pivoted along the way. He is an avid kite surfer, and right now he is joining us from the Dominican Republic. And Eric, you have huge talks on YouTube, from Mind Valley to Globecast to Globalcast. You are rocking the internet. When did you start hitting the whole YouTube thing?
I didn't even know, honestly. I just have such a passion for teaching. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in school, and I just had such a passion for it that I got involved in speaking and that kind of stuff. And then I did this talk one day. It was really random. I wanted to get published by Mind Valley, so I made sure to get invited to speak at one of their events. I went there, and the talk went pretty well. And I refused to do 20-minute talks. Like, no. You know why? Because you want me to talk for 4 days? I don't even have to prepare. You want me to talk for a day? I'll give it some thought. You want me to talk for 2 hours? I'll work on it for a week. You want me to talk for 20 minutes? I'm going to work on that for 3 months. Like it's a totally inverse relationship of time. And so they're like, can you do a 20-minute talk? And I'm like, okay. And I flew all the way to Greece and I do this 20-minute talk. And then Vishen, the founder of Mind Valley, comes up to me at dinner that night. And he's like, we're getting some complaints from the audience. I'm like, oh my God, what? We didn't give you enough time. Would you do another one tomorrow? And now they want me to do another 20-minute talk, and I have like 12 hours to prepare. And I was planning to sleep for a good 7 of those. And I made up a talk that I'd never delivered before. And I did it on stage, and then they threw it on YouTube. And it didn't go wildly crazy, 100,000 plus views on one platform, and another 250,000 on another or something like that. But that was the beginning. Yeah. And all of a sudden I started getting fan mail from people. And it was like, you know, people were writing to me a year after the video going, like, the video is about a concept I call the hindsight window, which is the period of time between a bad event happening in your life and the day you finally reconcile it. Like, you recognize the bad event as a sharp or flat note in an otherwise perfect symphony of existence. And the quicker you can close those windows, the happier you are as a person. So I have people writing to me a year later going, Eric, I came out of my house last night and my car had been smashed into and they stole my briefcase and I busted out laughing because of your video.
That's awesome.
I like that.
So I want to talk about WildFit. WildFit is one of your brands, something that you've created. Explain what WildFit is.
Well, I went through a really dramatic health recovery in my early 20s. Managed to avoid surgery, lost a bunch of weight, probably prevented myself from becoming diabetic. I was certainly in the pre-range. And I became pretty curious about how, you know, almost 10 years of doctors didn't help me with that. Like medications, pills, creams, inhalants, injections, nothing helped. And then changing my relationship with food did help. And that made me quite curious. And I was a precocious kid. So I went to one of my doctors, and at 21, I looked 12. Like, so I go up to one of my doctors and I'm like, how long did you go to medical school? Can you imagine a 12-year-old looking kid walking out? How long did you go to medical school for? Doctor's like, 6 years. I go, how much of that time did you spend studying nutrition and food? None. I see. And that began the journey for me. And I've asked that question of doctors in 20 countries around the world. And I guarantee you the answer is always none, unless they took an elective, because it's not required to become a doctor or even a surgeon to study that stuff. And so in my case, what happened is I started studying nutritional anthropology in the early 90s, long before there was paleo and that kind of stuff. But that wasn't enough. And what really changed us and changed everything that I do was that I had all these business clients. You know, I was teaching entrepreneurship around the world, and all these business clients would come to me with health ailments and difficulties and wanting to lose weight or wanting to gain weight or wanting to boost their sex drive or fertility or whatever. And I go, great, here's what you got to do. And then they wouldn't do it. Yeah. And it would drive me bananas. Like
your mother.
Yeah. It's like, here, do this and it'll fix everything. No. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do it. Next week, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, oh, whatever. You know, and so one day, about 6 years ago, I decided to marry all of my passions: my passion for nutritional anthropology, my passion for food, and my passion for behavioral change dynamics. I was really fascinated by that stuff because I had really begun to understand what was driving my behavior and what was driving, I studied everything from, the way the cigarette industry manipulated women to start smoking. What an incredible story that is. They were so smart with what they did. And I started studying all that stuff. And I connected them all together, and I took 8 people through a program to change the relationship with food. Here's one of the things I realized, and this could be the biggest breakthrough for so many people. If you try to do a diet, hey, look, I know diets aren't normally a man thing, right? But there are men doing diets. There are. And if you try and do a diet and it's got rules in it and you break one of the rules, then 2 problems happen. One, when you break the rule, you produce serotonin and dopamine because you're a rebel, right? So you reward yourself. And secondly, your self-esteem takes a dive. So, diet, nobody has ever failed a diet. Diets fail people. That's how it works. And so we figured out how to marry this stuff together, and it's been history. I mean, it's just been incredible. All 8 of the first 8 people completely changed their relationships with food. Did another class of 8, then word of mouth took on. And Ken, you'll appreciate this because you and I have talked. Like, I am less concerned with marketing than I am with results, and that's a problem sometimes. And so one day, a buddy of mine calls me up, Paul Sheely. He's a pretty famous author in America, and he goes, "I'm going to tell my tribe about your program, but I can't find the website." I mean, we don't have a website. What do you mean you don't have a website? Well, it's not a business. It's a hobby. I tell my business clients about it. We sell about 100 places a year. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. And he goes, "Well, I want to tell my network about it. You better put up a website." So we scrapped together a website, like, whatever. Where's Wix? Do we have Wix here? Like, not even a real website. And then 200 people signed up in a day. What the hell? That's 2 years worth of business in a day. And everything changed after that. Vishen Lakhiani, the founder of Mind Valley, did the program. He published his before and after pictures online. 1,100 people signed up in a week. And we went from 100 clients a year to 5,000 clients a year. Now we've served over 25,000 people in 130 countries around the world. The Canadian government summoned me to the Senate to give me a medal for changing the diet of people around the world. And it's just been the greatest roller coaster.
I have a selfish motivator on why you're here today. I can't stand Peter Hurley's beard. Peter, are you there? I want to pop you up real quick. God. Peter, let me see that beard. You see that? And Peter, what's the deal with the beard? When do you shave it off?
Oh, come on. Just because I filled you in. So I was in Australia and I was training for this world championship and it got canceled. So I jumped on a plane, got back to New York, went into quarantine on March 17th. And I decided until I'm back to my weight, I gained like what I consider the COVID-15 or whatever. And until I'm back to the weight I was in Australia, I'm not shaving the beard. So I shaved on March 17th and I haven't shaved since.
I don't know. You could shave the beard and get that number down by a couple of pounds just on hair alone, maybe.
There we go.
You understand real quick, Eric, I just want to let you know you're talking to an Olympiad. Okay.
Good deal. What sport?
Sailing. I race sailboats.
Oh, good deal. Good deal. I'm a kite surfer.
I mean,
I'm a fellow wind junkie.
Oh yeah, cool. I raced it in the older men's group now, but I used to, when I was younger, I was training for the Olympics.
Yeah, it's one of the top photographers in the world. Having a Hurley is a big deal, Peter Hurley. So what I want, and by the way, Peter, that's one of my reasons why he's here, is because I like seeing you with that giant Santa Claus thing going on, okay? Just saying.
You like it.
I want to talk
about it every day.
I'm just bullshitting you, buddy. Hey, I want to talk about something really crazy, and that is diets. And I first want to talk about Ashton Kutcher, and not about Ashton, but about Ashton being an actor portraying Steve Jobs. Can you tell us about that story real quick?
Yeah, I don't often do this one publicly because it's kind of controversial, but let's have fun with it anyway. So, one of the principles that we discovered that in nutritional health, which is, I'm going to say it to you, you're all going to know that it's absolutely true. And unless you're really on the cutting edge, you're going to be like, but I've never quite heard it said that way before. And you're just going to, it's one of those things you'll know. But here's the deal. All these diets out there, like you should eat this all the time. Every one of them that says anything like that is wrong. Humans evolved for cyclical eating patterns. Like humans evolved for seasons. The idea that sugar is bad is a stupid idea. Our ancestors were reliant upon fruit when it was available. So, we get this thing where people find one little nutritional science thing that says, oh my God, that's bad. Never have that again. No, we were meant to go through cycles. So Steve Jobs, he was one of these people that would like freak out on one season. And so what did he do? He did the fruitarian thing. In fact, he only ate apples for a while. And so Ashton Kutcher was, you know, playing Steve in the movie, wanted to do the method acting thing, as I understand the story, and decided to only eat fruit until one day they had to take him in an ambulance to the hospital because his pancreas shut down. By the way, can anybody remember what killed Steve Jobs?
Pancreatic cancer.
Oh, yeah. Now, I know this is, if you've been to philosophy and you've studied university, you're going to come back and go, Eric, you're building your argument on a logical fallacy. I know, but it's a good one.
But let's go after this now. First, let's talk about that pancreas and how vital it is and how it really, really drives us to eat what we should.
Away by the pancreas. Like, okay, so I'm writing a book at the moment called Post-Diabetes. Okay, like, and one of the principles of this book, one of the arguments we make in the book is that diabetes is not a disease, it's an injury. It's a repetitive stress injury of the pancreas. And it's fully reversible. And we know that that's true, but you know, only now we're beginning to be allowed to say it. But here's the deal with the pancreas. It's fascinating. Like okay, for most of our evolutionary history, most of our ancestors, our pancreas had a primary function, and that function was to produce glucagon. And glucagon would trigger the body to burn fat, to put you in ketosis effectively, right? So you would be predominantly a fat burner. This would make you a phenomenal endurance athlete. It means you'd have stabilized moods. Your immune system would be operating at a peak level all the time. Because when you run on sugar, you have these ups and downs, mood up and down, immune system up and down. It's like you're running on an unreliable unreliable energy source. And so the pancreas regulates this and says, no, we're going to produce glucagon. As long as you're not eating sugar, we're going to produce glucagon and we're going to burn fat. And you're going to be fine with that. Why? Well, because you store 200,000 calories of fat on your body all the time and only 2,500 calories of sugar. So if you burn sugar, you have to constantly replenish. And that's when people get hangry. It's because their blood sugar fell down. By the way, any of you who are married to somebody who can like lose their shit between meals? And by the way, men can do this too. I don't mean this to sound sexist, but it's very common with women to ride the sugar roller coaster and get incredibly emotional. And men do it as well. So one of the reasons is that we're meant to be consistent fat burners. And then we're only meant to become sugar burners in these odd, like circumstantial moments. Like imagine it's 30,000 years ago and a bunch of us are out hunting and we spot a tree and it's got berries on it. I'll tell you, baobab. Oh my God, the baobab fruit is gorgeous. And we would stop and we would eat ourselves. We would stop hunting. Why would we hunt? Why would we risk our lives killing a mammoth when there's baobab fruit sitting over here? We wouldn't. But it was only available for a few weeks. And then we'd have to go back to risking our lives hunting. And then we would go back to fat burning because you can't hunt mammoths on sugar burning. You just can't do that. You can't do that. And so the pancreas evolved to be able to switch those jobs. So you eat some sugar and your pancreas goes, suspend glucagon production, time for insulin. And then you produce a bunch of insulin. And then this is where it gets a bit crazy. You produce insulin to break down your blood sugar. Then you end up with insulin shock, which makes you crave more sugar. And this is killing us today. But 30,000 years ago, it's what saved your life because you see, the only time that fruit was really available and root vegetables were aplenty is right before winter. So we'd better get as much as we could. Normally, your stomach's about the size of your fist. You go eat 8 berries, your stomach's full, and you walk away. But if, let's say, me and Ken are out for a walk, and we eat 8 berries, and our stomachs are full, and we walk away, and you guys do the same thing. You stop and you eat your 8 berries, and then you walk away. But Ken and I have a weird genetic problem, and that is we overproduce insulin, and it puts us in insulin shock and makes us want more sugar. Then one of us, it's going to be Ken, I guarantee it, is going to go, hey, Eric, let's go get us some more of them berries. And I'm like, yeah, all right, let's go get some more. Who's had this conversation? You've eaten a little sugar, you want some more sugar. But if the rest of you didn't have that genetic inclination, you would not go back for more berries. And when the drought started, you would be the first to die. And your genes would not get propagated and passed on. Whereas mine and Ken's would be because we gorged on the fruit. Back then, it was an evolutionary survival mechanism. Now, the sugar industry has taken advantage of it and it's lethal.
Wow, that's crazy. So pancreas is important. I know Pete's joining us. He's in Singapore. I want to pop him on real quick. Hey, Pete, you lost a ton of weight. Actually, you didn't lose a ton of weight. You got insanely trimmed. What did you do? Because you were a bodybuilder, basically. How did you get so fit?
I think it was a bit of a combination, really. I mean, obviously, diet, exercise all comes into it. Interestingly, I mean, listening to your points on the pancreas, I mean, the one thing which I was doing quite a lot, because, you know, Vonnie obviously does a lot of acupuncture.
Your wife,
She
yeah.
was doing pretty much acupuncture for me, you know, pretty much every day. And one of the areas that you focus on with the 5 elements acupuncture that she was doing is pancreas. So pancreas and liver. And pancreas stimulation. And actually listening just now, I was thinking, that's quite interesting, because I was having a lot of acupuncture while I was getting really lean. I was very, very, what's a good way to describe it? I mean, to get things, I was ensuring that I was exercising in a fasted state. And I was ensuring that, you know, my carbohydrate refeed was only after I'd exercised, and I was lifting heavy, and I was doing intense exercises. Now, all of those things to get that lean, it worked, but you know what? It absolutely screwed my adrenals as a result of that. My sleep was poor, and it took me probably, you know, I mean, I put on a little bit more weight just because, you know, getting down to where I was, which was probably about 7 or 8%, it wasn't sort of sustainable for my body type. You know, I kind of need to be probably around about the, you know, somewhere between 11 and 13% body fat, somewhere around there. But it's, I mean, it was just consistency, Ken. You know, as much as anything, you sort of, I was eating pretty much the same food. I pretty much cut out, you know, most saturated fats from my diet. Most
Can you
fat.
live this way? Pete, can you live?
Huh?
Can you live this diet? Can you live this lifestyle of what you're eating, or will you be bored to death?
I mean, listen, I'm one of those people who kind of, I mean, you know, I look at things as a bit of a campaign of discipline, you know, just whatever I'm doing, it's a campaign of discipline, you know, so
Welcome
yeah.
to marriage. Welcome to marriage. Okay.
Yes, that as well. But I don't think that most people can. I mean, you know, I was going out for dinner, and everybody else was eating nice food and having a dessert, and I wouldn't have anything. I wasn't drinking any alcohol. I wasn't having any, you know, food porn at all. You know, I mean, it was really boring.
Eric, what Pete's saying is he had to actually change his lifestyle to find what he wanted, but he can't live in the lifestyle that he found.
I have a couple thoughts, Peter. One is that, and please excuse me, I'm not saying I'm right. I just want to offer you a thought. There's nothing wrong with saturated fat. It's a, you know, and I want to give you the background on how that became the enemy. Trans fat, it's terrible for you, no question about it. But in the 1950s, there was a bunch of research that was coming out that demonstrated that sugar consumption causes a bunch of cardiovascular issues and was the primary trigger of heart disease. And there was an organization called the Sugar Research Board, which I think you can now get, that's a euphemism for the sugar lobby. And they hired 2 Harvard researchers to commission a study. And they blamed fat for heart disease. And you know what's really funny? I want to read you a quote, actually. I want to read you a direct quote. I happen to be editing this section of the book at the moment, and I just want to read this to you. Because after commissioning this study, they then came out with this great statement. Now, it was called the Sugar Research Foundation, and there's a guy named Henry Haas. And so Henry says this: leading nutritionists are pointing out the chemical connection between Americans' high-fat diet and the formation of cholesterol, which partly plugs our arteries and capillaries. Now, first of all, it's sugar causing inflammation that's causing that plugging. And they know that, and they've hired the nutritionists that they're talking about. They did this. The nutritionists they're talking about are in their pocket. And they were published in the New England Journal of Medicine because before 1984, you didn't have to disclose your funding source. They go on to say, and I'll paraphrase instead of reading it, they go on to say that this news is going to cause a 20% reduction in the fat consumption of Americans. And if we, the sugar industry, can absorb that 20%, it will result in a major profit boon for our business. Wow. They spent $50,000 on Harvard researchers, and they made billions of dollars while also devastating healthcare around the world. In the 1970s, nobody under 40 had type 2 diabetes. Nobody. Now there are 20 million young Americans with type 2 diabetes. So I'm not saying you should load up on fat. I'm not a high fat person. I'm not one of those. I'm just saying you and me, 50,000 years ago, walking in the bush of Africa, we would not have shot ourselves or arrowed ourselves an elephant and trimmed the fat away. We would have eaten the fat preferentially.
Yeah.
So
I think.
So how does Pete maintain what he wants, about 11%, and eating in a way that's comfortable but it's not a discipline, but it's a lifestyle.
I'm curious, Peter, you said that you only eat carbs after. Can you explain?
Yeah, so basically what I do is I do a carb refeeding window. So effectively, I'm a pretty low carb. I mean, listen, I know my body type. You know, I'm a sodexo meso. You know, I mean, I basically I'm one of those people who I put on weight extremely quickly. Like, right. I mean, I've been up to 120 kilograms in pounds. What's that? That's 200. It's a lot. I can't do the calculation, but it's a lot. My kind of healthy weight is around about 90 kilograms, somewhere around there, and that's kind of where I am at the moment. I got down to about 82, somewhere around there. I mean, listen, it's I think just on your point of on fat, yeah, I do agree. You do need a certain amount of fat in your diet. I think if you're going to get really lean, you need to cut a lot of that fat out. And you really obviously need to cut out the sugar and all of those things. But it's not sustainable to cut fat out, as you say. You do need a certain amount of fat in your diet. But it doesn't allow you necessarily to get down to those really lean single-digit numbers. And actually, I don't think it's necessarily healthy for people to stay in those really, lean single-digit numbers anyway. So that's fine.
One thought that I have, for whatever it's worth, is that there's sort of two ways to do low carb. There's low carb every day, or there's low carb every month. And generally, I aim for the low carb every month rather than the low carb every day. And what I mean by that is that I frequently have no carb days, and I frequently have those. And one of the reasons I do that is I have, over the last 10 years, I've been visiting the Hadza Bushmen in East Africa, for research, and I've been doing that for 10 years. And I can tell you, I'll give you a great example. Last year I went to go visit them, and I was doing an extended stay. And I was staying a full week, and I don't take food with me. I take water because I'm not a total idiot. Because I know, but I don't take food, and I live with them. And the chief and I have a bit of a banter going. We have a little bit of a competitive banter happening. And so one morning he comes to me, and he got annoyed. Listen, he got annoyed because we were sitting around the fire one day, and they were telling stories about animals, and he was making animal noises, and he's really good at it. And then I did this. I went like, which is the exact bird that lives just over here. And he was blown away that white dude was teaching him bird calls, and I taught him a whole bunch of them. So now we've got this little, like, I'm from Africa, I know some of this stuff. And then he comes to me and he goes, "Are you ready to go hunting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." And I put my phone in my pocket. There's no signal, but I want to track them. We do 27 miles. 27 miles. And I'll tell you, it was a no carb day. We did 27 miles. We ate a few small birds on the way. The next day we wake up again. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. And he's like, "Are you ready to go again?" And in my head, I'm going, "Are you freaking kidding me? People train for months to do a marathon, and then they take a few days off. I didn't train for this, and I didn't take it." But of course, I'm a guy with an ego. So I go, "Yeah, let's go." And so off we go again, 17 more miles. And we kill a bush pig, which is about 180 pound or an 80 kilogram pig. And by the way, it's the best meat I've ever eaten in my life. And again, a completely no carb day. And I can tell you, on those days, I have felt absolutely the best. And it's the days that I do when I bring the carbs back in, that I start to feel adrenal fatigue, or I start to feel mood fluctuations or what have you. So that's all I mean by the difference between low carb seasonally versus low carb daily.
You kind of just made the argument for not having carbs.
Sorry?
You just made the argument for not having carbs.
What I'm saying is I don't ascribe to the idea that carbs are evil. I subscribe to the idea that they're seasonal. That if you and I are out hunting with the Bushmen, there's going to be many days where carbs are just not available. Like that's just how it is. We're going to go hunting. We're going to eat. And by the way, when we kill the bush pig, Ken, nobody goes, "Hey, I've got some ribs here. Who's got the potatoes? Nobody says that. They just eat the ribs. That's how it is. And that's how probably it has been for most of our history. This thing where we convolute every meal with carbs is new.
Yeah. Okay. Let's dive in a couple of questions real quick. I want to go over to Neil. Neil's got so much to add to this whole conversation. Neil, where do you want to take us with this? Neil Cannon.
Yeah. Hi, Eric. I'm so in alignment with everything you're saying. I feel like just saying yes. It's amazing. Yeah, I just want to kind of say, I totally agree that everybody is different. And there's not one diet that suits every single person, because all of our genes are different. We're very different people. But I think the body thrives so well once you're fat adapted, and we need it. Our cells need it to thrive. And even the whole fat causes heart disease thing that's been disproven. There's a book I think it's called Fat Does Not Lead to Heart Attacks and Statins Are Not the Answer. It's been very, very well documented, peer reviewed. It's brilliant. I went to the Dominic D'Agostino Metabolic Health Summit in LA last year. Brilliant, brilliant summit. And it was very, very ketosis focused, but obviously arguments for either side of the coin. But the idea of taking statins to reduce cholesterol, for example, and cholesterol is a precursor molecule for the synthesis of sex hormones, is causing guys' testosterone levels to plummet. And they're thinking it's just normal part of aging, but it's just that they're taking this drug which is slamming their testosterone levels.
Okay, first, I got to ask a question. Neil, I'm in LA. It's sunny out. I thought you were in LA. Are you in a cell? Where are you?
I've just gone to Mexico.
Oh, my God. I was wondering, what are you doing so dark there?
My visa expired today, so I'm in a very remote location. There's no light, otherwise I'd turn it on.
It's good broadband. It's good broadband.
Yeah, apparently.
So let's go after a couple of things of what Neil is saying, and let's talk about keto. Keto, because we've heard so many different diets out there. Eric, the best diet is what? Oh, he's got a slideshow. All right.
I don't have a slideshow. I just had this picture. This is us making fire on the top of a rock. So
Mark Burnett from Survivor would really be impressed.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what. If he watched the whole kill the pig, I'll tell you, it's fascinating, that process. Kill the pig, make the fire, burn the pig, burn the hair off, draw and quarter it, separate the organs, take the ribs out and put the ribs around the fire and cook them in the soil. And then you ask, why are we eating the ribs right now? Because it's not economically worth carrying them back to camp because their bone percentage is too high. I mean, these guys know their stuff. It's fascinating.
It was good.
But Neil, one thing I want to offer you, and it just, look, again, it's an opinion, but genetic diversity is, it's a fascinating conversation. I lost you guys for a minute there. No, my screen. But it's a fascinating conversation. And one of the things we have to remember is humans, we have these egos, and the best marketing in the world is marketing that speaks to you. So if you walked into a bookstore and you saw this book and it was called like the Neil Cannon diet, you'd be like, I got to buy that. That's awesome. I got the Neil diet. And so what's happened over the last couple of years is there's this new like genetic testing diets and blood typing diets and what have you. But let me tell you, you can take the average American and put them on any of the blood type diets and their health will improve. And I'm not suggesting there aren't some subtle differences, but you know what? There's not one person on this call that doesn't need vitamin C, K, D, B, C, all 20 amino acids. And by the way, that's not true of all mammals. In other words, there's not one of us that has a different dietary requirement than another, but there are metabolistic differences. For example, when you get yourself fat accustomed, things begin to change. I would say that women and men are a little bit different in their protein requirement and their fat requirement. And I think that we do have different roles. Some people were built for endurance and some people were built. So I think of the dietary differences largely being metabolistic, but not nutritional. And by the way, here's the thing of that. Go and test anybody and you'll hear, what are they sensitive to? You know what they're sensitive to. They're sensitive to wheat, to dairy, to legumes. They're sensitive to Neolithic foods and processed foods. So it's when you're not sensitive to those things, it doesn't mean they're good for you. It just means you're not getting the message from your body about it. When somebody's not lactose intolerant, it doesn't mean milk's good for them. It just means they don't get the alarm that other people get, I think.
I totally agree with that. Also, I think it's more weird not to be lactose intolerant.
That's right.
It's like we've been kind of groomed to go from our mother's breast onto the cow's udder, after we've stopped breastfeeding, consuming this.
And if they can prevent you from switching in the first place, they'll do that. And you know why? Because every baby vomits, every human vomits when you first give them dairy milk. Everyone.
Right.
They all vomit. And we have this whole thing now. It's like normal for babies to vomit. No, it isn't. It's not normal. It's normal for them to burp up and spit a little, but it's not normal for them to project vomit out their bodies. Like, can you imagine a Bushman baby just wasting calories all over the bush like that? Like, no, never. And so what they've figured out is that if you wait till a kid is 12 years old to introduce them to dairy products, then they vomit. They go, I'm not drinking this. So they've had to move the age down, 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 so you don't remember the vomiting. So you're right. They try and switch you from the boob to the cow quick, but if they can get you to never go on the boob in the first place, then they really win.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Let me go to Neil. Let me go to another question real quick. Be right back. Let's go to Jacob. Jacob, I'm going to unmute you in a minute. All right, there. Hey, Jacob, what do you want to say to Eric?
So two things. The first question is about salt. You know, coming from a Jewish family, there's just been salt in everything, whether it's pickles or whatever. I even salt my salads. I don't have high blood pressure, but everyone who's older, 40 in my family does. So there's that. And the second thing is portion control. I eat very healthy, but I just eat a ton. And, you know, you were mentioning 8 berries and a shrunken stomach. How do I do that?
Neil, I love it. Sorry. I just like this woman asked me the other day, she goes, but at what point would it be a good idea for my child to have dairy milk? And I said, at the point you gave birth to a cow, then they should have dairy milk. So Neil, I'm with you. Jacob, was that Jacob?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Jacob, I have a funny thought about salt. First of all, English is a funny language. I think all languages have this weird thing where we take groups of stuff and put it under one word. So like, is meat good or bad? Yes. Yes, meat is good or bad. It depends on the meat. You know, is sugar good or bad? Yes. Yes, sugar is good or bad. And so is salt good or bad? Yes, it's good or bad, depending on which salt. And so part of the problem we have with salt is that a lot of the salt we eat is just garbage. I mean, it's garbage. But then the other problem is that it's not the salt, it's the sugar. And the sugar's causing inflammation. And then the salt may at a given moment cause a spike within that inflammation, but I don't believe that salt has anything to do. About 10% of people are apparently quite sensitive to salt. And I haven't been able to do the research to say what happens to those 10% if you take them off sugar. I don't know. But I suspect that if you took them off sugar, they wouldn't have a problem with salt. And I can tell you, my dad had his first heart attack younger than I am today. He's incidentally now 77 years old and fit as a fiddle and, you know, incredible. But he was in a sense, in a weird way, one of my first clients. But he has a bad relationship with salt. But I happen to know he also has had a bad relationship with carbs. And so I'll tell you, not only am I not afraid of salt, but because I have to drink distilled water, and I don't agree with distilled water at all. I agree with mineral water, but I live in a country where we can't drink the tap water, and I have to buy distilled water. So what do? I take rock salt and drop it into my water bottles, and I drink salt water. Not enough that you taste a lot of salt or anything, but I believe salt is imperative to your existence. Now, can you overdo it? Yeah, you can overdo oxygen. Yeah. Now, portion control, let's talk a little bit about that. One of the reasons that we need portion control is that we eat foods that screw up our thalamus and screw up our internal governance. So here's an example. Which meal is more likely to drive you to want to have seconds? Fettuccine Alfredo and garlic bread, or wild-caught salmon and broccoli?
Fettuccine.
Yeah, we all know, right? The fettuccine, you're having seconds, and you're ordering dessert. Well, why? Why is that? I mean, it's so full of calories. It's so full of immediate calories. The fish isn't really, I mean, it's got them, but it's not this big burst of energy. So why is it? Well, partly what happens is that when you eat the fish and the broccoli, your body is releasing nutrients into your blood, and your thalamus is going, oh, look, nutrients, we can stop eating. But when you eat the fettuccine, your body's going, Jesus Christ, what is this? What the hell? What's going on? I get all this sugar, but there's no nutrient. And then also the pasta has grains in it, and grains are fighting your digestive process. Grains don't want to be digested. They're fighting you. Like think about this. Grains have been in this evolution. Evolution is like a big chess game all the time, right? The grain makes this move, 2 million years ago. And then the bird who eats the grain makes the counter move to try to get through that move. And then the grain has been doing its level best to stop getting digested so it can become a plant one day. And then the bird has been doing its level best to get through those defenses so it can get what calories it can. And then, I don't know, 20,000 years ago, humans thought, you know what? We're going to get in this multi-million year race, grind the grains up, and expose our digestive system directly to the hormone triggers and the lectins and all the garbage that's in there. So now we eat those things and our digestive system gets all bound up. And so our thalamus is looking at the blood going, more nutrients, keep eating. More nutrients, keep eating. And that's why, by the way,
because it has a lack of it. Okay.
So the more nutrients you consume, the fuller you'll get faster.
Not the more nutrients, but let's say the more nutrient dense and less convoluted. So if you eat that same salmon, but you eat it with bread, you're going to be hungry.
Wow.
Interesting. Is oat milk okay?
Is what's that?
Oat milk.
It's a carb. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with carbs. There's no carb that I think is okay to eat every day. Look, we've been eating fruit for millions of years. All these people out there, fructose is bad. All right. Tell Australopithecine and Homo erectus and early sapiens that. I mean, they seem to get through okay, but they got it for a few weeks.
Right.
And then they moved on. And we're on the carb highway. We as a culture eat carbs far too much.
Let's talk to TC. TC, what do you want to ask?
Well, I'm glad you brought up a couple of different points. One being when you talked about doctors not studying nutrition. I had horrible acne for 4 years, went to every dermatologist under the sun. Never once they say, hey, you might be allergic to whey. I was drinking whey protein shakes, terrible acne, cut the whey out, gone. I also went vegan for 6 months.
Wait. Did they give you Accutane? Did they ever give you Accutane?
I refuse to take that. But
all right, I'll come back to that when you're done. Keep going.
Yeah, that shit's terrible. But then another diet, I was going vegan all of last year. This past winter, my serotonin levels dipped unnaturally, and I wasn't supplementing enough B vitamins. I had everything from chest pains to insomnia. Moodiness, yeah, like anxiety, like
you want to know why? This is the irony. I'm so sorry to say this, especially if anybody's vegan. I'm just going to tell you something that for some of you, this will be mind blowing, but it'll explain a lot. This is a documented thing. One of the symptoms of B12 deficiency is aggression, but it wasn't, it didn't evolve to make somebody an asshole on the internet. It evolved to make sure that they were aggressive enough to get their fair share of the meat.
I believe it. Yeah, 100%. It's crazy though. And then I started taking B complex, kicked it to the curb. But if we supplement and get all our micronutrients, outside of avoiding, eating cake every day, doesn't just boil down to eating a variety of foods. As long as you're getting your micronutrients met, does it really matter what you're eating?
I have this relationship with supplements. I'm not a big fan generally of them. I don't like it's the way I like to listen to music. I'm not really interested in individual notes. I want to hear the whole song. So I don't really want to take vitamin C when I could eat organ meats or drink an orange, or eat an orange. Now, that's not to say and by the way, I am supplementing at the moment. I believe that in the days of COVID, taking magnesium, vitamin C, and zinc are perfectly responsible supplements to be taking. We definitely have soil erosion problems. And so I'm not against them. But my general idea is that the first port of call should be to get all of our nutritional needs met first through lifestyle, through whole foods and through natural lifestyle. Like, do not supplement dietary vitamin D. Go outside. Just it's free. It's just out there. And if it's light outside, your body's going to make it, right? And instead, we've got this whole sales pitch. And by the way, a buddy of mine designed the sales pitch. A buddy of mine was the guy who did the research that came up with the whole soil depletion argument to get people to buy supplements. He's the guy who did it. Now, I'm not saying there isn't truth in the research, but it was marketing. So in a sense, you can supplement for this and supplement for that. But here's one of the issues is, have you ever looked at the list of vitamins there are? If you have, it's fascinating because it's not just 26 of them, of course. It's B this, B that, B this, and Z this, and so on. But here's the other thing. Those are just the ones we know. Like, we don't know them all. We don't know all the minerals. We don't know them all. We don't know them all. And so if we're going to rely on supplementation, we're going to miss some stuff. And so my view is, look, it's an overly, again, logical fallacy, whatever you want to call it. But here's the deal. TC, if you were going to get yourself, say, a cheetah, let's say somebody offered you a cheetah and you wanted to have a pet cheetah. Do you want to go read a bunch of studies of cheetah nutrition to figure out what to feed the cheetah? Or do you just want to watch the Nature Channel and find out what wild cheetahs eat? And that's going to be the better answer than any nutritional study you're ever going to look at. And that's my general idea. So my view is do the very best you can to eat the way our ancestors ate. And then when you have a measured deficiency, supplement.
I'm back eating meat, by the way.
I am very glad to hear that. I really am. And I'll tell you
No,
what.
I wanted to try every diet out. I tried hard
I was
carnivore
vegan
diet.
for 5
I
years.
tried keto. Yeah, and it just didn't work for
You
me.
were vegan for how long, Eric?
I was vegan for 5 years.
And what made you switch?
Wow.
I'll tell you exactly what made me switch. Lies, dishonesty, and physical things. Here's one of the things that happened. In the 1960s, there was this pervasive idea that we were the only primates that ate meat. Okay. By 1978, we knew that wasn't true anymore. Diane Fossey and, these people were out there studying them. And, let me tell you something about chimpanzees. They are freaking awesome hunters, man. You do not want to be hunted by a chimpanzee. I'm telling you right now. Like lions look like they're pretty mean hunters. Like there's some strategy going on. There's no strategy. It's just, I've seen them hunt personally. I've spent a lot of time in Africa. They hunt. There's a degree of teamwork, but it's really randomized. Chimpanzees, this is how they hunt. They like to hunt colobus monkeys. And one of the reasons they like colobus monkeys is that colobus monkeys don't have opposable thumbs. So when the monkey's holding onto the branch, you can pull them out of the tree pretty easily. But the problem is colobus monkey's very light, just has to go out to the end of the branch. Chimp can't get it. Chimps are big like us, so they can't. So all the colobus monkey has to do is go stand at the edge of the branch. Like it's really, except that chimpanzees are smart. So what do? They use psychological warfare. Before they go and hunt the monkeys, they start making war sounds. They start pounding the ground and they yell and they scream and they scare the monkeys, causing them to produce adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline and cortisol have the effect in mammals of reducing their intelligence, making their relationship with logic incredibly tenuous, and erasing any sense of empathy. They become terrified. And in that moment, they lose any logic and they start running. They don't stay at the end of the branch. They run and the chimpanzees chase them.
Wow.
But the problem is chimpanzees' arms get tired because they're heavy, man. They're as big as a small human. So the trouble is by the time they catch them, they won't have the strength to kill them. But that's okay because they chase them over 6 miles to a group of chimpanzees that were sitting there waiting. Okay, like you do not want to be hunted by chimpanzees. I'm telling you right now. And by the way, in case people, God, chimpanzees are fascinating. A couple of years ago, I went to Mahale in Tanzania to go in and visit wild chimpanzees. If I can find some here, I can't find them now. But in any event, I went to go see them, and they told me this. See, first thing is there's 2 other species of chimpanzees. There's us and bonobos. They used to be pygmy chimpanzees, but we've changed the name of them. And you might know this because it's been reported in science literature, but we share more DNA with the one chimpanzee than the other one does. So we are the 3rd chimpanzee, right? But get this. These Chinese scientists that I was out there, they've been studying this group of chimpanzees for generations. The same scientists have been going back and then, they've been studying. So chimpanzees have this culture. If you're the king, you are king until somebody displaces you, but your generals protect you. So a king chimpanzee will stay can be king for 30 years, whereas a lion might be the top dog for 18 months. So the chimpanzees really get to hold on, which means he really does get to pass on his genes because he's the only guy mating, right? And the generals hold his position for him. But he has to maintain economics with them, making sure the peace is good. He has to be a good leader to maintain his position. So one day there was a perfectly good king. He's the chief. And then one of the other chimpanzees challenged him and he didn't fight back. He's like, all right, you want to be king? It's your deal. So this new king takes over and he's we're all men. The new king was an asshole. The new king wouldn't share meat. He would take meat from them. Like the new king was a bad king in every possible way. All the chimps were sad and depressed. Like it was the mood of everything changed. And then one of the chimpanzees challenged him and bit him on the face. And the scientists are watching this. And they're like, holy shit, he's been challenged. And he runs down the path screaming for his generals who are supposed to jump in and save him. That's the culture. But he ran down there to the generals and the generals grabbed him and bit through his triceps, his biceps, and his Achilles tendons. Think about that. Then they spent 2 hours killing him. They're human. They're fascinating. And the reason
By the way, I just want to let you know, if you replace those chimpanzees with lions, that is the Lion King. Just letting you know, Simba, that was kind of the story of the Lion King.
But with lions, it's not like that at all. That's just the Disneyfication. There's none of that with lions.
So since we're still related to chimpanzees, And we're going back to why you stopped, or you went from vegan back to meat.
Because I found out that they were incredible hunters, and I was training for the London Marathon. At the same time, I find out that baboons are meat eaters, chimpanzees, bonobos are meat eaters, even gorillas are opportunistically occasionally eating meat. Like, the whole idea that we were the only meat eating primates was just completely a fallacy and wrong. And that woke me up. And then I was training for the London Marathon. And guys, you know, listen, if you give up something and a week later you have dreams about it, it might be withdrawal symptoms, right? But if you haven't had something for 5 years and you're training for the London Marathon, and I didn't train the way most people train. I was running 30 miles 3 days a week because I was overtraining so that the marathon would feel light for me. And so I was really demanding on my body. And I was waking up in the night dreaming about meat. Like, I would wake up in the night dreaming about it. And so I started doing the research. I went down a different path, and I had to come out with it. I had to be honest. And I had to say, listen, guys, I've been advocating for veganism all this time, and I was wrong.
Let's go to Teddy. Teddy, what's your questions, your ideas for Eric?
A couple things. You can choose which one you want to answer. Acidic food versus alkaline food. Is there ever a benefit to anything acidic ever? And then also proteins.
The acidity alkalinity issue is a really fascinating one. And again, it's largely just been propagated by marketing propaganda, by companies that want to sell you alkaline waters, or companies that want to sell you alkaline green powders and all this kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of misinformation about this concept of alkalinity. And one of the ideas that they say is that if your blood were to become too acidic, you would die. Have you ever heard of that? I mean, have you ever heard of that? No, because it's not going to happen. And by the way, back to the magical pancreas. One of the jobs of the pancreas is to produce calcium bicarbonate. And the reason that the pancreas produces calcium bicarbonate is this. If you are eating excessively acidic foods, because that season is the season you're in, then your body needs to counterbalance that acidity in your blood to keep your blood at the exact right pH. And your body has a regulatory system like this, just like you do for your swimming pool, right? So what your body does is it takes a loan. It applies to the central bank of calcium. Where's the central bank of calcium? Your skeletal system. So it applies to your skeletal system and says, can I have some calcium? And then the pancreas manufactures calcium bicarbonate, which balances the acidity in your blood and keeps you from dying of acidity. But when the season then shifts again and you move to a more alkaline state, then your body goes, oh, we can put the calcium back now. And so you repay the loan back to the bones. And one of the things that drives you to repay the loan back to the bones is load-bearing exercise and impact. When you bang your bones by running or by fighting or something, your body gets this message of, holy shit, we need the calcium back. We need to be strong. When you lift a really heavy weight, you think you're exercising the muscle, and you are, but you're also torquing the bone. And the bone like gets torqued and it goes, shoot, we need to be stronger. And so it makes a request of the body, and the body goes, ah, yes, we can repay the calcium loan back. So I'm not that big a fan of the diets that say you should only ever be alkaline. What I'm saying is sapiens evolved for seasonal fluctuation, and some seasons are more acid producing. For example, when fruit is in season, you're eating a ton of sugar, it's going to be quite acid producing. And some seasons are less acid producing, like when you're fasting in the wintertime and there's no food at all. And that's an incredibly alkaline state to be in.
How's that? Man, Teddy. And then the other one was about beef.
Protein. I'm curious your thoughts on best types of protein, how much protein. I do a lot of like pea protein and Beyond Meat and stuff like that. But collagen protein versus whey protein versus hemp versus pea protein.
Let's back up for a minute and talk about what you don't need protein. You need amino acids.
You need what?
You need amino acids. You don't need air. You need oxygen. So when people go, I hope you're getting enough protein, that's like going, I hope you're getting enough air. It doesn't matter how much air you're getting if there's no oxygen in it. Doesn't matter how much protein you're getting if the right amino acids are not in there. Doesn't matter. So pea protein, nope, doesn't have them. It just doesn't have them. It just doesn't have them. I don't know how else to tell you. It just doesn't have them. There are 20 amino acids that your body requires. 11 of them you can manufacture when you're in a healthy state. If you're not in a healthy state, another 5 of them become quite difficult to manufacture. And the other 9, you just can't make them. You just don't have that. You must consume them. And the only place that they exist in entirety is in animal products. It's the only place. Now, Can you get them from vegetable products? Theoretically, you could kludge it together by examining that you need this amino acid from this legume, which would be difficult because legumes are incredibly difficult to process. But you could kind of piece it together by kludging it through some form of supplementation or trying to put together the right vegetables. But that is not the way humans have ever done it before. And no successful society of humans has ever managed to make that work. So if the truth, and by the way, here's the thing we need to know about proteins. I'm curious. I'd love a survey on this. Honestly, raise your hand if you knew this to be true. How many of you are aware right now, before I say it, that insulin is a protein?
Well, I know it because you told me the other day.
So Andrew kind of did, Lauren a little bit. Most people didn't know, and you knew because I told you the other day. Why do you not know that? Why? Everybody should know that. It's a protein. Wait a minute. How about this one? How many of you knew, before I said this, that antibodies are proteins?
Because you told me.
3 people. 3 people knew that. Now I want you to think about something for a minute. A virus attacks your body, assuming, I don't want to get into this whole debate about the germ theory of disease. Let's just assume for the minute that viruses cause disease and that we then produce antibodies. We can debate that another day. But what I'm saying is, in the current understanding of viruses, the virus comes into your body and your body has to make antibodies. And it makes those antibodies. And once your body knows how to make those antibodies, it stores the blueprint of those antibodies in something called memory B cells. And that's why you can do an antibody test 6 weeks later and have no antibodies, but your memory B cells can produce the antibodies for you if you encounter the virus again. But here's the trouble. Virus comes in and your body goes, holy crap, new virus, got to make some antibodies. All right, let's try. And basically your amino acids, think of them like Lego pieces. You know, you've got 5 colors and each of the configurations. So we go, let's try green 4, green 6, green 8, red 3, and red 6. See if that works. Didn't work. Let's try blue and yellow and orange Lego piece. We don't have the orange one. We don't have it? No, we don't have it. Why don't we have it? Because we decided to be vegan and we just opted not to eat that vegetable this week. And so we just don't have it. Well, if you don't have it, we can't experiment with that antibody. And then we're dead.
Wow.
Sorry if I'm a little harsh on this, but
Teddy, it's hard to hear you, Teddy. Teddy, it's hard to hear you.
I don't know if it's on this mic.
Yeah,
there we go.
Real quick.
Wait, question. Did you not know that before you were vegan? What were you eating when you were vegan then? And how do I tell my vegan girlfriend to eat meat? Or to, to be healthy?
Your vegan girlfriend, how long has she been vegan?
God, like 5 years.
But explain how old she is, Teddy.
She's 23.
So she was eating milk, but she's been eating it since she was a teenager, going through a hormone.
But she has stomach problems. She what she thinks is candida, because when she eats like rice or sugar, her stomach hurts. But I'm like, babe, eat some meat. Like that might be.
I hate to say this to you. I want you to know something absolutely. Like, there is not a single nutritional requirement that human beings have that can't be satisfied from meat. Now, I'm not suggesting you should be a carnivore. I'm not a fan of the carnivore diet. I just had Sean Baker on my show. I'm going to talk to Paul Saladino next, and these guys are all carnivore diet guys. I don't agree with that. Why? Because my general idea is, I don't care what your study says. If it violates evolutionary history, there's a problem. So we ate plants. I know we did, but there are better conversations to have about this. Now, here's the thing. The good news for you, 85% of vegans will stop being vegan in time. They will. It's just the way it is. Those are the statistics. And so she will likely come to a point one day where something triggers her and she's willing to try at some stage. I hope so, because if you guys plan to have children, for example, here's the science. Veganism damages eggs, and it also damages sperm. So I'm hoping that if you guys ever want to have kids, she will be willing to, and that might be where you get her. That might be where you say to her, hey, I've just got and you can go find the studies, like they're out there. I just read this thing that if we have incomplete proteins and we don't have any animal products at all, it actually makes fertility really difficult. And you'd be amazed how motivating that can be for women.
Real quick, a couple of things. Let's first go after, when you say meat, are you including fish as a meat?
Yes.
Okay. So fish.
I'll even tell you, I don't agree with dairy products at all. Okay, I eat butter a little bit, but I don't agree with dairy products as a functional thing for humans to eat. But one of the things that frightens me is a lot of people come and do my programs and they're vegan, or no, they're vegetarian. Then they learn about milk from me. Then they give up milk. And I'm like, no, like, don't you understand? Like, the only reason vegetarianism has not devastated India, and it's on its way to devastating India, but the only reason it hasn't fully devastated India yet is that they supplement with milk. Milk will damage their long-term health, but it will keep their protein and B12 levels high in the meantime.
Did you read that from Nathaniel? Nathaniel actually said at least 40% of Indians are vegetarians.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, couple of
No,
things.
but they're not vegans. They're vegetarians. And the real, like even the Jains are the newest proper vegans, but they were never vegans either. That's a new thing for them. In fact, like, so this concept of cultural veganism has never succeeded. And it's not succeeding in India, by the way, even their version of it. They have rampant obesity and rampant diabetes. They're in serious trouble.
Can I finish
Insulin,
this?
real quick. Okay. Insulin is a hormone. It's a hormone, not a protein, or is it a protein?
It's a hormone and a protein.
It's both. Okay, go ahead, Teddy.
What would I say to a vegan who does it for humanitarian reasons and doesn't want to physically bite into meat, but maybe will have whey protein? Like, what's the best alternative to them physically eating meat?
Well, is it okay if I say something like mildly facetious?
Always.
Please be as harsh as you need to.
Veganism is a cult designed to prevent animals from having the right to live in the first place. I see this guy, Ed Earthling dude, and he poses with all these pictures of the cute little piggies and the cute little sheep. If he had his way, they would never be born. Ever.
Yeah, exactly.
They wouldn't even have the right to live.
Yeah.
The issue is not whether or not the animal lives or dies. The issue is how it lived. What are we going to do? We should go out and that's it. We should stop the impalas from breeding because they keep getting eaten by the lions. So we got to stop. The issue is not whether or not the animal dies. The issue is how it lived. And I'm telling you, and by the way, let's talk ecology if you want. Regenerative ranching is carbon positive. Vegan farming is ecologically devastating. 25% of the deforestation of Mexico is for avocado farming. And by the way, to farm avocados, you have to cut down a minimum of 40 acres of virgin rainforest, kill 10,000 animals, and then you need to kill another several thousand animals a year to protect your avocados. The last thing in the world that's vegan is an avocado. By the way, let me show you something here. I want to show you something just to talk a little bit about compassion and real humanity and what all that stuff really means. Because you see, one of the things that happens when people become vegan is I do believe that they start creating a bunch of metabolic problems for themselves and psychological problems. And I went through it. What do you guys see here? What's going on here? What do you see?
An elephant scratching himself by utilizing the tree.
Isn't he gorgeous?
Yes.
He's gorgeous. He's only gorgeous because you don't understand. You see the temples above his head?
Okay.
See how they're dented in?
Mm-hmm.
I shot this picture. I shot a whole series on day with this elephant and his brother. His temples are dented in like that because he's starving to death.
Yeah.
And the reason that he's starving to death is that PETA and the WWF and a bunch of bleeding heart leftists. And by the way, I lean to the left in a lot of areas of my life. I just don't lean. I don't like the edges of the left or the right. And so PETA and these guys have commissioned and paid for and lobbied to prevent culling of elephants in the Kruger National Park. And these elephants get 6 sets of teeth. These elephants are herbivorous. They eat grass, they're grazers, and they eat bark and fruit and stuff as well. But their teeth are worn out by the grass. And so when they finally lose their 6th set, they are no longer able to process food. And what would have happened 2 million years ago is a saber-toothed cat who has teeth designed to take out the throats of elephants. Their teeth are not round like the Disneyfied saber-toothed cats. They're saber-shaped. They're shaped like swords, and they're designed for hunting elephants. And we had them in the Americas too, by the way. But the difference is they only went extinct in America 30,000 years ago. They went extinct in Africa 2 million years ago because our ancestors were there. And then now we took over as the primary hunter of elephants. We used to have 11 species of elephants in the Americas. We also had 11 or 12 in Africa. Now there's only 2 left. We took over as the hunter. We now don't hunt them because we're being good. Because we've got our heart in the right place. And now he's starving.
Wait.
We're starving them.
They've been hunted now because of their tusk for crazy Chinese.
Poaching is a different issue.
Right.
But I'm talking about in a protected game reserve, they're not being hunted. And if we do not cull them, then they breed themselves into extinction. They breed at 12% per year, but they also starve to death. And do you know what it's like? Can you imagine? It takes them 2 years to starve to death. Can you imagine that? Wait, I mean, I'm sorry. If you had a choice, you're an elephant, and you have a choice between a bullet in the brain or 2 years of eating and eating and eating and never being able to satisfy your hunger until you finally die. I'm just trying to say that what we consider to be humanity, what we consider to be loving, is not always. And what I'm saying is that when we think about this argument, the minute somebody is arguing that we shouldn't eat meat because the animal has to die, I'm saying, okay, why do you drive a car? Do you know how many insects you kill in your car every time you drive your car? Is one life worth less than another? The fact of the matter is that we live in a world where things get killed. And I'm sorry, but that happens. And what I'm concerned about is not whether or not the cow is going to die. I want to know what its quality of life was until the day it died.
Okay, let's go after a couple
Life
more.
anyway.
Teddy, good luck.
I'm done.
Good luck on that one. Let me go to Big Paul. What, Big Paul?
Sorry, one thing. Sorry. Brian, you're absolutely right. I'm not saying that vegan farming is in itself bad. I'm saying that much of the food prepared for the vegan industry is monocrop cultured, just like much of the other food. And the real danger is monocrop farming. You're absolutely right. Thank you.
What did, real quick, Brian say?
He just pointed out that avocado. Oh, sorry, Brian, you go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. No, just saying that, in general, in terms of argumentation, I think pointing out something that's not done well in the first place isn't a way to counter the argument, right? Monoculture is like no good, and there's way better ways to do farming.
There is.
Yeah, and I would kind of say that in generally about other stuff about veganism as well. I'm just curious because I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now. Feel great. Kind of do a ketogenic version, and what you were saying also about just switching up food, whole foods, super nutrient dense. And I wasn't aware of some of the stuff that you were saying about specific proteins and specific amino acids. I try to have MCT oil every day, coconut aminos, different things like that. And also as an engineer, I know that there's way better ways that we can do things at scale as well in terms of, more biodiverse ways of eating and growing things.
I would say, Brian, and I'm not against anybody wanting to be a vegan. And I think there's plenty of good reasons that somebody might want to consider it for seasons of their life. There are some things that we know, and that is that our ancestors frequently went for long periods of time without meat. I mean, they had to. That's just how nature was, and we're built for that. When we eat meat, we store B12 for an extended period of time. We're a bit like a Nile crocodile. A Nile crocodile can eat a buffalo, and then not eat for another 18 months. That's why crocodiles are so scary to me. You just can't tell if they're hungry. Like, when did you eat last? 2 years ago. Shit. So, but we're kind of similar, right? You go and eat a big piece of bison, you can store that B12 for up to 18 months and not have any B12 deficiency. And so you don't even start to experience things like anemia. And men generally after 18 months to 2.5 years, they start to have issues if they don't have an egg and they don't have to eat a lot. But so I would just put to you that, hey, do the research on the amino acids. Make sure that if you really, really want to stay with veganism, that you make sure that the plant the ensemble of plants you're eating are going to get you those amino acids.
Okay, last question. Big Paul, you got the last question, buddy.
Thank you, Eric. Listen, my brother has gone into this new kick, and he's trying to baptize me into this bullshit. I don't know if it's bullshit or not, and that's lectins. He's saying that it's lectins bad for us. I don't know much about lectins, but this is the new crave or the new craze.
These kids, right, Big Paul?
Yeah.
I actually think that I might have been the very first person in the world to suggest that.
Oh, then it's a good thing then.
I didn't name them. I didn't know they were called lectins, but basically this is the argument. Every organism on earth is trying to fight consumption, right? Like, nothing wants to be eaten with the exception of fruit. Some fruits want to be eaten, but they don't want their seeds consumed, right? So like, think about what it's like when enough of us here are old enough to remember what it was like to bite into a grape that had seeds in it, right? Like, you make that mistake no more than once a year, right? And that's because the grape is saying, dude, you get the flesh, you got to poop the seed out over there, right? So it's a transportation deal. But every other organism other than fruit is trying not to be eaten. So animals try not to be eaten by defending themselves through camouflage or physicality with claws and teeth and horns. And a few animals use biochemical defenses, a few, like the skunk and like the water buck in sub-Saharan Africa. If a lion chases the water buck, it'll run into the water. And it'll run into the water because it produces an oil that crocodiles don't like. So there's a biochemical defense system going on, but mostly animals use physical defenses. So once you've killed an animal, its meat is inert. It's not trying to fight you anymore. Meat is one of the most nutrient dense, easiest things in the world to digest because it doesn't care. It did its defense. You beat the defense. The meat is not trying to fight you. And so what happens is plants are always trying to fight you. They do not want you to eat them. They don't want to be consumed. They've grown thorns, camouflage, tannin, caffeine. They've come up with a bunch of insecticides, and lectins are one of those plant defense mechanisms. They have grains have hormone triggers in them designed to trigger hormones to mess with your digestion. They have enzyme suppressants that are designed to neutralize enzymes so you can't digest them. Plants are fighting like hell, man. Please, I don't want it. And seeds most of all, because that's like a tomato is going to attack your ass. If you want to eat tomatoes, they're a bad idea to eat. I eat them, but if you want to eat one, peel it, because most of the plant defenses, lectins, are under the skin, and take the seeds out because the rest of them are around the seeds because they're trying to protect the seeds. Then you can eat the flesh and not have such a problem. Nightshade plants, full of lectins, but here's the big difference. Old world plants are where our DNA come from. And so we've been defending ourselves against those plants for a long time. So those plants aren't as bad for us.
Like
we
what?
shouldn't eat any of them every single day. What's that?
Which plants are those?
There are, it's easier to look the other way. Like many of the fruits that we eat are old world, like bananas and things like that are original old world or tropical belt plants that we would have had for a long time. And a lot of the root vegetables that we now eat are, kind of bred versions of old world, but a lot of the root vegetables we eat are also new world. So now there's another complicated thing. New world, like here's definitely stuff to avoid. Nightshade plants, bad idea. Where do they come from? The Americas. The first time you ever encountered one in your DNA, unless you happen to be a native North American or native South American, is 400 years ago. Evolutionarily, this is a blip of time. Your body doesn't know what a potato is. And nobody likes potatoes anyway. I know some of you think you like potatoes, but you don't. You don't like potatoes. You like salt and fat. Like what do you add to the potato, right? But if you have any friends that have like chronic migraine headaches, take them off potatoes. 90% of the time the headaches go away. Why? Because there's a bunch of toxins in the potato, and when you cook them, if you don't cook them, the potato will make you sick right away. But if you cook them, you can kind of get through it. But it doesn't mean you're not building up the toxins, which is long-term going to give you headaches. So yes, plants are fighting you constantly. And any plant that you eat, even a good one, like say you want to eat kale, go for it. Eat some kale. Got lots of calcium, but it'll cause you to be unable to uptake magnesium. And so you'll get leg cramps and you'll have a hard time sleeping if you do it for too long. Again, humans need to have seasonal rotation, particularly when it comes to plants.
Thank you for that. That answers a lot of questions, actually. Shit.
How about avocados?
Avocados are New World plants. Now, here's a weird thing. Just because a plant is from Africa doesn't mean you can eat it. Our ancestors would have had to have a relationship with it to make it edible, right? Just because a plant is from South America doesn't mean it's bad for you, but it definitely means it's not necessary, right? Obviously, it's not necessary because humans made it this far without it. Avocados are unnecessary. You do not need to have them. That said, the majority of the avocado's defense appears to be in a very tough outer skin layer. And once you're through that outer skin layer, the avocado is just fat and flesh, and frankly, full of folic acid and probably good for you, but unnecessary. I would argue that sweet potatoes are an example of something called convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when you get two things evolving into the same niche from two different continents. For example, the vultures that live in the Americas look very much like the vultures that live in the in Africa, but they're not related at all beyond being birds. They're not at all related, but they evolved into the same niche. So they look similar. Well, the sweet potato evolved into a niche where the yam lives in Africa. And so we are actually quite good at the sweet potato, where we're not good at white potatoes, if that makes sense.
Wow. What did you have for dinner?
What did I have for dinner? Well, you see, I'm living in this place where I have to like get food delivered. And I was out of everything last night. I had some fresh
coconuts.
Dorado. I had fresh Dorado that I bought from the fisherman the other day. And I cracked a bunch of farm fresh eggs into a into a Pyrex bowl, poured 2 inches of that in, put some broccoli and fish on top of that, then bake that for a while, then put more eggs in, then put fried onions on top, then put, ooh, I'm getting hungry. So I made a quiche of some sort.
Eric, dude, you're awesome. You know, I know Saturdays, you should just hang out with us on Saturdays, and it's great to have you part of the Metal family. I know that you're down in the Dominican Republic. How long are you going to stay there? Are you going to be there for a while? Should we do a group trip down there?
I live here, man. This is home. I don't plan on. The only move I might make over the next year or two is to Costa Rica. I might move to Costa Rica.
Let us know. We're going to follow where you're at, and we're going to do a big giant.
Do any of you guys kiteboard?
We're going to do kiteboarding. There's some kiteboarders out there.
Neil and anybody else that does any podcasting, interviewing, any of that kind of stuff, absolutely we can. I'm going to try and find a link and post it in the chat right now where you can book right into my calendar. I won't make you go through the vetting. I'll trust that you're all the right people. So I'll just do that for you now. But again, give me the hands on the kiteboarding again. Who kiteboards?
Well, not yet.
Nobody? Oh, Neil, you kiteboard. Well, Neil, you probably then know where I live. I live in Cabarete, so you'll have heard of it because it's Mecca of kiteboarding. Any of you guys who want to come down here and kiteboard, let me tell you, it is the ultimate extreme sport. It is so much fun. Let's do it.
Peter Hurley, he sails down there.
How far are you from Punta Cana?
Far, 5 hours.
Okay.
Punta Cana is like the Cancun of the Dominican Republic. It's nice, but we live in the naked North Coast, man. Like it's much quieter up here, and it's all about kiteboarding and windsurfing and yoga.
Only because my same brother has a house there that I could use.
Have you ever been to the Pride, buddy? It's like driving down from San Francisco. Eric, thank you so much. I know it's insanely late there. You are an awesome guy, and thanks a lot for helping us out and understanding where things are and what's real and what's not. Thanks a lot.
It's absolutely been my pleasure. And hang on, I want to give these guys this link here.